take on the issue of what is usually referred to as the Banjul Muslim elders calling on the president, as if they are the only people who are martyrs, while other religious leaders from other regions of the country are also sitting, enjoying the discussion.
My dear brother, Mr. Ebrima Baldeh, and thank you for bringing forward this thought-provoking, I would call it process, situation, reaction, or structures. You began with the Banjul Muslim elders as we know them. Well, based on those who control the narrative as far as where it originated from, we haven't read it on paper. It may be on some archive somewhere. But what we have heard is that it began in 1905, which means then 1905 to 2005 would be 100 years. Then it will be qualified as a 120-year-old tradition. To that effect, we want to go back to square one and then see what is the reason why we had that in the first place. Well, if you go back to 1905, I believe if one revisits the history of the United States of America, there might have been slavery or segregation was at its peak. So it is around the same time that we had colonial power in the Gambia. Many people will be surprised to know that prior to Britain colonizing Gambia, the French were there, and then the demarcation or the territory was drawn by them, of course, in conjunction or in consultation with the British. And then the Portuguese also were in the Gambia before all that time. Okay, so we have had elders who chose to put together a structure that would guarantee the cohabitation within a power, the sphere of power, with those who were subjects of the British monarchy at that time, because we were colonized. So I don't see anything bad in creating structures that would engage power, but the power that was to be engaged at that time, I don't think it was the kind of power that anybody would convince to share authority with. So it was more of an appeasing structure, if I would say it that way. Because my observation is that had it been effective to dilute the contents of the authority of the colonial powers at that time, I don't think we would have had these stars or icons like the late Francis Edward Small rising to resist. So the resistance against colonial power cannot be scaled down to what one may say it was because of the Muslims, that's why colonial power was contained. No, because the revolt against them, Francis Edward Small played a great role, and we all remember when they say the bells he rang in Balangar. Okay? So there are people who are giving it out, saying that in the first place, Balangar was the first capital of the Gambia. Some people say that. Whether it is true or not, I'm not the one who will confirm it, just like Saint Louis was the first capital of Senegal. Some people say that. So when we draw it down, we come to realize that, well, if that is the case, it was called Banjul Muslim elders. But we also remember the history of the Gambia, where we had the protectorate, isn't it? It is the time that elections were to be held just within the Banjul area, and then that would have determined who would lead the Gambia. The colonialists would have encouraged that because if you look at the family geography at that time, if you look at the influence at that time, you had people who were called elites and all that. It would have been a good deal for them. But according to all the people, Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara and his team saw the shortcoming in that and refused it. But I wouldn't only give credit to Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara and his team, but I would give credit also to Francis Edward Small because he played a big role in sensitizing people. And then, you know, Allah chooses things in a way that human beings cannot understand. Had Francis Edward Small been a Muslim, people might have said that, okay, it's because of he's a Muslim, that's why. But Allah showed us that he can change things under the colonial power without even going through the majority. He went through the minority. That's Allah's power. Francis Edward Small was not a Muslim. He was a Christian. That's why he's called, I think he's called Reverend. Okay? So that also is a plus for Gambia because it is a country where both religions were combined to stand up against tyranny. The Banjul Muslim elders also, they found the need to do that. And those people who originated the Banjul Muslim elders are people of character, are people who never compromised their principles, particularly after colonialism ended. We all know why we respect the late Alhaji Omar Faye, Alhaji Babu Samba, Alhaji Muhammad Lamin Ba, and others, and others. Okay? We also know why we respected people from, the combos, not about the politics of it, but there were great, sheikhs in Gunjur and other places. Serekunda itself, they never were they were never sons of the land that would allow a colonialist to walk on them. No. So all these things were combined to, I would say, to mean something. Okay, to mean something means Banjul Muslim elders. But now that we have lived through that, I believe the name should accept to be tested by evolution and to be tested by time. The tests of time have called for the expansion of the syllabus, the expansion of the program. What do I mean by that? Is it Banjul Muslim elders now? Because we are past that era where it was, they call it Bur Banjul, 1905 to now. When Francis Edward Small came is the time that the expansion began because he rang the bells in Balanga. He didn't ring them in Banjul. He didn't go to the Anglican church to call people to come out to stand up against colonialism. And in fact, when we expanded, many people in the Gambia, some scholars had started discussing secular. I hear even some people in the executive today, when they come on the television, they say Gambia is a secular state, like the French would say, it is un système laïque ou un pays laïque. No. The secular nature of the Gambian society is not put there by law, it's not put there by a government. It is put there by the psyche of a society that drank from a culture of tolerance. We have to make that clear. Because when they say secular, in fact, that answers the question. Because there was a time a tug of war began, and it was still caused by the politicians, even the former regime, when people were saying that the Christian feels threatened. And then this regime also, 4 years or so ago, maybe 3 years or so ago, the topic was brought back, some people at parliament trying to jump around like engine pistons, like they're the ones protecting Islam. No, that is not it. In fact, why do we have what they call secular today? Separation of mosque from state or church from state. That did not begin because of Islam. It began in the medieval ages or so in the Western Hemisphere when some kings wanted to use the cloak or the robe of a priest to cover the robe of a king. okay? And then we'll tell you that we are sent by divine force to rule you. Church members refused it, like Francis Edward Small. They said no. That is, I would see it like that's the threat he pulled to show people that being in power is not divine when it is about authority on earth. Okay? So if that is the case, then you will come to understand why am I expanding it so wide is for us to understand the perspective in a better way, or in the way we believe is more of a spectrum, a panorama, than just being myopic about it. And why am I taking that argument is for people in authority not to see themselves as the one in the kitchen of tolerance, the kitchen of democracy, and the kitchen where they can dish out dishes to people and tell them, we give you peace. I do hear that all the time. No person on earth, particularly if you are on the seat of power, you should not use words like, I give you freedom, I give you peace. No, 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 no. That, in fact, is dictatorial tendencies. It is the Constitution that guarantees, and in fact, it is not like giving peace, but it guarantees peace. It guarantees human rights. It guarantees the rule of law within tolerance. But that tolerance itself cannot be be a clause. You will never see a constitution that will say, there is a clause that says, we have to legalize love, affinity, appreciation. No leader should even think that you can use anything to make people love you. No, you don't do that. Unless if you want to rule people by using, for me, I am not a fan of Machiavelli, but we quote him. If you want to use the prince to rule people, you are either loved or feared. That does not apply to our time. He said this in the 15th century. People would argue it out, but I don't belong to the school of thought that will accept. Some people will come back and say, oh, maybe you don't understand. I really understand Machiavelli. I read The Prince and I know what he's trying to drive at, but there are things that are not dogmatic. There are things that are not coming from the sky. He's a human being who thought of how to survive and make others survive under autocratic rule at the time in Italy and some parts of Europe. Okay. So all these things combined, that's why I will come back again to give a big plus to Francis Edward Small. Okay. Now, when we come to the name Banjul Muslim Elders, okay, they said it was created during the colonial era. You know, the colonialists are tacticians, they are strategists. They knew that the greater number in the Gambia were Muslim. But the mistake they made was to think that as the protectorate, when Sir Dawda said, no, it has to be expanded, well, they thought that within the circle, you know, that's the same thing that the French were doing in Senegal. There was a time, Dakar, Rufisque, Thiès, and all this, they called them les citoyens évolués. You know, the refined citizen. We were under the British rule. Some people will tell you, no, 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 they are different systems. No, they are not different systems. They all crossed the Atlantic Ocean from the Western Hemisphere, and they came to intrude, take over, and rule us by force. So they might have been exchanging notes in a very subtle way underneath. There are similarities here, because that's what they wanted to bring. Okay. So now, should we call it Banjul Muslim Elders? No. It should not be Banjul Muslim Elder, because let me diagnose the acronym, then we continue, Mr. Baldeh. Banjul is the city of the Gambia, isn't it?
Yes.
Now we have Muslims and we have elders. Now, when we talk about only Banjul is the capital, it occupies a certain area. It did not represent in terms of nomenclature the rest of the country at that time. When you talk about Muslim, we say in the Gambia, the greater number of the inhabitants are Muslim. Now, when we bring the word elder, elder is more cultural than Islamic, isn't it?
Yes.
Because it doesn't mean that if you have the age, you understand Islam. It doesn't mean if you have the age, you can counterbalance what an imam says. Now we are talking about this present government, what I heard, we are talking about imams on pulpits. So that's why I see it as some sort of a tug of war where the arena is public opinion or the psyche of the psyche of society, and the tug of war or the gladiators in this case are the pulpits and the podium. And usually that leads to conflict. And that's a conflict that people should be very, very careful of.
Okay, Ambassador, we have a lot to cover.
Yeah.
I'm so some of these issues are going to be thoroughly explained by you, because you are giving us the genesis and a very interesting history, the interlink between the Gambia, Senegal, and the French and the British. Okay, now let's delve into the issue of the nomenclature, that's Banjul Muslim elders.
Yeah.
As you were given your explanation, my mind flashed back on the issue of how the British divided the Gambia, the protectorate and the colony. And now, even Gambia, even though after independence, we still have what you call Kiwa Kaula. So we tend to discriminate among ourselves that this one is from the village, as if we are originally not from the village. Even the way of dress, the way we talk, like those who are in the city are considered civilized and or more oriented, more fashionable, more appealing, and they're like more refined, so to speak. Now, why do our leaders also, after years after colonialism, tend to fall for this trap? Okay, we have Banjul Muslim elders. And then as a representative of the general Muslims around the country. And now, the issue that I want us to properly diagnose or even analyze is the issue of rapprochement, peace building. Usually, it are supposed to be a moment where we fraternize, peacefully and reflect on some of the issues that are affecting our society. Or lately, I don't know, I can remember very, very little about, if anything, about Jawara's days because I was small. But Jame, during his time, during it, usually a moment where, he's angry, talking about issues, and then, so to an extent, threatening certain things or even threatening imams for that matter. So it's unfortunate that after Jame, his successor also tends to take the same tone that we've had, during their meeting, how the president has said issues that one find very difficult to process. So I don't know, what do you make of it? And then to add to injury also, we've seen a novel idea seen by the government or supporters of the government about, in that there are plans in the pipeline to pay imams or faith-based leaders. So, that's why I said you've come on board, given a long explanation, but you have a lot to cover. Because, can you unravel some of these things?
Yeah, what I would say is I'll just play with words here. I like the fact that you said I've given you the genesis of, because most of the time when people analyze things, they tend to contain themselves within time factor and also just refusing to touch on the nerve of the subject matter. You cannot do analysis. There are no best analysis though, but we can also try to be part of good analysis. But you cannot do analysis without beginning with causes and then go to match the causes with effects. So what we should be careful of as a country though is that for the genesis not to turn around and be nemesis. What I'm trying to say here is this. We know the Banjul Muslim elders has been a structure there. For me, the only reason why the structure exists or existed and is still existing, I would say that way, is that it is trying to find a comfort zone for cohabitation between authority, society, culture, and religion, not only religion. Okay? So if that is the case, it is not a bad structure, but the name has to change. The acronym does not fit the current time. It does not. Now let's go back to the sequence of events. During Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara's time, there were elders who were known for speaking truth to the president. I cannot remember their names here, but there are Banjul elders, even though we may say that it's Banjul, but those people did not go there as Banjul. No, no, no. They went there as God-fearing people. They went there as people of dignity who spoke truth to Sir Dawda with discipline. In fact, the kind of truth that they told Sir Dawda, I don't see the tolerance in the former regime and the present regime. When you took the people, there are some of their sons and daughters live in the Gambia today. They know these people. They used to speak truth to Sir Dawda direct. Okay? We all know the things happen in the Gambia. Some people are talking about, I'll come to those dates about 81 and all the stuff. I diagnose it from a security angle. Okay? Now, let's remember when the elders came to meet the junta in 1994, the archives are there at GRTS. I believe, if not GRTS, but the videos would still be there. Based on world history, that happened today because it's very recent, 1994, based on the longevity of world, I would call it world history if you want to say that. That's just yesterday. The archives are there. We all remember the reaction of the junta towards the Banjul elders that time. The late Imam Abdullah Job, the way they received him, the way they reacted, it was not the most disciplined and tolerant atmosphere because they were thinking that the Banjul elders came to beg for some people who were in the former regime and could be arrested and then be tried or taken before commissions. That's what they thought. And the reaction towards the Banjul elders that day was definitely not nice. It is that. So now, what I see in this case is this way. Those in authority all the time, whenever it is an Eid, you know, we have gone through the Eid al-Fitr, and I think they are going to go back again on Eid al-Adha. Okay? The people on the seat of power or leadership would always want to use the podium to pounce on the pulpit, or those on the pulpit also would also come to meet them, maybe some with prejudice, maybe some with clear conscience and good hearts for them. So it's like it's no longer a useful structure where its functionality should be to nourish a comfort zone for cohabitation. It is more like something confrontational. Now look at it. Who do you see today? Imams reacting to the president's speech. The presidents, some people are calling themselves advisors, will come and tell you, oh yes, I agree with the president. You see, let me make one thing clear here. One of the people I disrespect the most is people who are called advisors and would always agree with the president. Then you are not an advisor. Advice, though, is not instruction. You are asked to advise. You cannot instruct a president. No. But if your role is to advise, the day of your advice is expected on the day that things are heated up. And that's the day you are expected to advise whether you are going to lose the position or not, but give an advice. Okay? Because the advice that I expect from anybody towards the president is, let him remain calm. Let him listen to them when they come to speak. Let him absorb what they said. Sometimes you can write the notes and say, okay, we have taken into account all that you have said. And we will make sure that we'll call you maybe within 2 weeks or before the next Eid for us to have a forum. If need be, let them even attend cabinet. And then you discuss them in a very tolerant way. That is what will give him to be recognized as one of the most tolerant democratic presidents. Okay? And then the Muslim elders also, like we call them, would take note. The president will say, okay, we have the chief of staff, or anybody should come and say, but we also have a list of concerns here. What we have as a list of concerns is this, is this, is this, is this. Kindly go back, call all these imams, discuss with them. We are not controlling anybody. But what we want is for us to understand each other. Then a blueprint will come out of that to shape a better approach. Because when I hear things like there are other countries where sermons are written by governments. No. I don't know. You see, sometimes the people around the seat of power, like I always say, being a president does not mean you are an expert in all the subjects. I won't blame the president where you make a mistake. But the people giving you the advice should also be individuals who are subject experts. But the danger in most of our governments is if you're appointed a permanent secretary, a deputy permanent secretary, a chief of staff, you think you are a subject expert. You are not. You are not a subject specialist. I can cite countries during Hafez al-Assad. What used to happen is you will write the khutbah in Syria, send it to the headquarters in Damascus, and there's a special place. They will look at the khutbah, if it is acceptable or not acceptable, and give it back. But for a government to sit down, and these governments they are referring to, let's say a government like Saudi Arabia. I have heard people making reference to it. But what Saudi Arabia is doing, Saudi Arabia, let us remember, it is where Islam was born. Muhammad Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is in Saudi Arabia. Those people did not wake up and use democracy or constitution to come and be looking through things. These are people, in fact, even if they are the ministry, these are people from Makkah al-Mukarramah's university, from Medina, from Al-Azhar, from other places who are highly educated scholars. So it is like what they say, they begin galgi. They know the subject matter. But in a country like the Gambia, when you say a government will write sermons for imams, and if you remove one line out of it, there's a problem. Now let us go and look at the organogram of this government. Who among the cabinet, the permanent secretaries and everybody out there can tell me between him and Allah that they can write the most acceptable khutbah and Allah will not be angry with them? Muhammad Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam will not be angry with them and Islam will not be angry with them. Who among them can do that? We have to be very careful. You see, let's analyze the Quran this way. I will say it in a way for people to understand. Those who study oil production, hydrocarbon deposits, you know you have crude oil, isn't it, Mr. Baldeh? Crude oil is what you refine, and then they call it refined oil. Now, the language of the Quran, look, this is language from a message from Allah through Jibril to Muhammad Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You know, even if you read the Quran, some of us are just little talibes. We are not highly educated in it. But what we picked, you did not hear changes between the angels. Every time in the Quran, whenever a message came, they will say, Jibril has come to Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You never heard them say, Jibril came today, tomorrow, Azrael came, Asrafil came. No. It's only Jibril. Allah knows exactly what he is doing. So the language of the angel, for a layman like me, is not a voice, it's a feeling. But the voice is what Allah has put in Muhammad Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam through another language on earth. Then he voices out the feeling. That's the message. Okay? Even if there's a voice, we don't hear the voice. He is the one who can hear the voice. I cannot hear the voice of Jibril. You cannot hear it. No other person around him, the Sahabas and the Walis, cannot tell you that I hear the voice of Jibril. It is only Muhammad Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam who can hear his voice. So now, if that is the crude and the powerful, unrefined message, when I say refined, I'm not saying that we are refining Allah's message. No. What I'm trying to say is, now let us use medicine, in fact, as a better example, medicine, not crude oil, medicine. If you go to a doctor, the hospital is there. There are so many branches that cure different things. That's why you have dosage and overdose. The imams are very useful, Mr. Baldeh, and I hope this part of my explanation will be left intact. I always like teasing you like that. Because why are they useful? The imams are the ones who are responsible of writing the prescription.